Imagine this for a second. You're out on an African safari, right? The savanna is huge, stretching out all around you, and you can almost feel the anticipation in the air. Camera's ready, you're scanning, searching for that, that iconic sight. Lions.
Yeah.
You turn a corner on this dusty track, and bam, the road is completely blocked.
Right.
It's not by like a broken down Jeep or a fallen tree. Nope. By an entire pride of lions.
Just there.
Just there. Not moving, not growling, just owning the road, basically. Like they know it's theirs. And look, this isn't some made-up movie scene. It's a real thing that happens, and it tells you so much, some really surprising stuff about these incredible animals, stuff that kind of blows up that whole king of the jungle idea we all have.
It really does. It's one of those moments that forces you to just stop, to really look, and maybe rethink what you thought you knew. And that kind of captures the whole spirit of what we want to get into today.
Absolutely. Yeah, today we're doing a real deep dive into the world of lions. We want to get way past that that simplistic king of the jungle stuff. Right. We're going to unpack their behaviors, which are fascinating, their diet, which is actually incredibly tough, their whole social structure, how they interact with each other, and crucially, how their lives bump up against ours, sometimes in ways you just wouldn't expect, even life-changing ways. And as we talk, we're going to keep a special eye on something that often gets overlooked. The role of time in a lion's life. You're going to hear about how they spend like huge amounts of time just resting. But then there's these critical short bursts of activity that make all the difference for hunting. And even specific moments, maybe just 10 minutes, sometimes a bit longer, maybe 30 minutes. That can literally mean survival or, well, not surviving for these amazing predators.
Yeah, and to really dig into this, we've gathered insights from a whole range of places. We've got expert fact sheets that break down the details of what lions eat, their biology. We've got these big encyclopedic entries covering their behavior, their social setups, plus cutting-edge scientific studies looking into that tricky area of human-lion conflict, and importantly, conservation efforts.
And the first-hand accounts, too, right?
Exactly. And maybe the most compelling stuff comes from those first-hand accounts. Safari goers, experienced park rangers sharing these really unique, intimate glimpses into lion life. So yeah, get ready for some facts that might genuinely surprise you, maybe even reshape how you see these top predators.
Okay, let's dive in then. Usually when you picture a lion, what pops into your head? For most people, I think it's that image of a constant prowler, right? Always hunting, always moving, stalking something, being dominant.
The classic image, yeah.
But what our sources show is something, well, pretty astonishing, almost the exact opposite, about their daily rhythm.
Yeah. It's truly fascinating because contrary to that image, that idea of constant motion, lions are actually, you could say, masters of stillness. They spend, get this, an incredible 20 hours per day inactive, mostly just resting.
20 hours.
20 hours, that's a massive 80% of their whole day just conserving energy.
Wow. 20 hours.
Yeah.
That really messes with our human idea of what it means to be productive. Always being busy. We sort of expect apex predators to be constantly on the go, fighting for survival every minute. But 20 hours sounds almost, if you didn't know better, you might almost think it's lazy.
Oh, it's absolutely anything but lazy. That massive amount of inactivity, it's highly strategic. It's deeply wired into them as a way to conserve energy. Think about their bodies for a second. Lions actually have a relatively small heart compared to their overall size.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, like a lioness's heart is only about 0.57% of her body weight. So their cardiovascular system is just not built for long-distance running, not like an endurance athlete. They're biomechanically designed for these really explosive, super short bursts of intense activity.
Okay.
So those 20 hours of rest, they're not just about recovering from the last effort. They're about carefully storing up, building those energy reserves for the moments that really count. Those incredibly intense, high-stakes moments like hunting or defending their territory or, a quick, decisive fight. It's like a finely tuned survival plan for a really demanding world.
So it's not about being busy all the time. It's about being incredibly efficient with every bit of energy they have. Like they're constantly charging their batteries, right? Getting ready for those critical moments when they need absolutely everything they've got. You kind of see a similar thing, but way smaller scale with house cats, don't you?
You do, yeah.
They nap for ages, sometimes in the weirdest places.
Yeah.
But when they decide to play or, hunt a toy mouse, they are intensely focused, super quick, just these little bursts of energy. So this is basically that same feline thing, but ramped up massively for the ultimate survival game out on the plains.
Precisely. That huge amount of resting time, isn't random at all. It feeds directly into when they exert energy and how they do it to survive. It's a absolutely fundamental part of their success.
Which naturally makes you wonder about the other side of the coin. If they're resting for 20 hours, when does all the, the lion stuff actually happen? When do they do the socializing, the grooming, marking territory, and the big one, the hunting?
Right. Well, generally, lion activity really ramps up after dusk. It carries on through the night, often into the early morning hours. That's their prime time. That's when they socialize, do that mutual grooming, which is super important for bonding within the pride, and even, the necessary stuff like defecating. And all that leads into these intermittent bursts of moving around, more intense activity right up until dawn. And hunting, specifically, that most often happens during those twilight hours or really early in the morning.
So they're basically working the night shift. What is it about the night or those twilight crepuscular hours that makes them so important for their survival, especially for hunting?
Well, there are several key things working together there. First, and maybe the most obvious one, is visibility. It's much harder for their prey to see them coming in low light.
Makes sense.
Animals like zebras or wildebeest, they rely heavily on eyesight to spot danger. So they're at a big disadvantage when it's dark. Second, the cooler temperatures are really important for lions, especially those big males. Those impressive manes look great, but they can actually cause a lot of heat stress during the day.
Right, like wearing a big fur coat.
Exactly. So hunting when it's cooler lets them use those powerful bursts without overheating. And third, in areas where there are a lot of people or where lions might face threats from humans, there's just less human activity at night. It lets them move around more freely, more safely. Our sources actually point out something interesting here. While lions are often described as usually more diurnal, meaning active during the day, they readily adapt to being active at night and at twilight when persecuted, which really highlights just how adaptable they are, how smart they are about navigating landscapes where humans are present.
That makes total sense. It's kind of mind-boggling, though, a creature with that much power, that capability, and yet, on average, they only spend about 2 hours a day actually walking. And only 50 minutes eating.
It's incredibly efficient.
It really is. It's not just about saving energy, is it? It's about stacking the odds in their favor in what's got to be a super tough competitive environment. It really is the ultimate example of working smarter, not harder. Every single movement, every burst of energy seems calculated, purposeful.
And that specialized timing, hunting mainly at night or twilight, it directly boosts their hunting success rates. They don't waste energy just wandering around. Every move counts, which leads us straight into the heart of their survival strategy, the hunt itself.
Yeah, the art of the hunt. And it's clearly not just about brute force, even though they definitely got that. It seems to involve this almost unbelievable level of patience and careful planning.
Absolutely. Lions are textbook stalk and ambush predators. Their approach to prey is slow, it's deliberate, and it requires incredible patience. Just the stalking phase, where they're carefully closing that distance to the target, that alone can take half an hour or longer.
Half an hour.
Or longer, yeah. They are absolute masters of using cover. They'll freeze the second the prey looks up, using every scrap of vegetation, every dip in the ground, every shadow to stay hidden.
Half an hour of just silent, focused waiting. That feels like an eternity in the context of a hunt where things happen so fast. It really drives home that a successful hunt isn't just about that final sprint or the power of the takedown. It's fundamentally built on this prolonged, almost meditative commitment to getting into the perfect position without being seen. It's as much about mental focus and strategy as it is about physical ability.
That extended stalk is absolutely critical for a few key reasons. It lets them drastically cut down the distance to the prey before they launch that explosive final charge, which means they use less energy in the chase itself. And crucially, it maximizes the element of surprise. That surprise is often the single thing that makes the ambush work. It's really a masterclass in focused, disciplined patience, just setting the stage perfectly for what has to happen next.
I can almost see it, That body held low to the ground, those powerful muscles bunched up, ready to spring. The crouch, almost invisible. Ears flattened back so they don't stick out. Eyes locked onto the target, just burning with that predator focus. Every breath controlled, every tiny movement agonizingly slow. It's not just an animal moving. It's like a weapon system being carefully aimed, preparing for that one decisive moment.
And that incredibly careful preparation is exactly what allows them to unleash such explosive power when they finally decide, okay, now's the time.
And when they do decide, when they finally commit to the attack, all that patience we were just talking about just explodes into pure, raw ferocity, doesn't it?
It really does. Once they feel they're close enough within that striking range, a lion launches itself forward with incredible force. The main goal isn't usually a long chase, it's to cut off the prey, run ahead of it, block its escape route. Now, remember, they're not built for stamina, that small heart we mentioned,
All right.
but they can hit truly astonishing speeds. We're talking 45 to 60 kilometers per hour, that's about 28 to 37 miles per hour, in these short, powerful bursts. These sprints usually don't go for more than maybe 100, 200 meters.
That's still incredibly fast for such a big, muscular animal.
It is. And what's really remarkable, showing their unique physiology, is one study back in 2018 actually clocked a lion hitting a top speed of 74.1 kilometers per hour. That's 46 miles per hour, just for a fleeting moment.
Wow. So it's not about being the fastest over distance, like, say, a cheetah. It's all about that initial overwhelming explosion of speed and power.
Precisely. What seems to be really crucial isn't just the top speed they can reach, but their acceleration. Lions can accelerate incredibly quickly, about 9.5 meters per second. Now think about their typical prey, like zebras, wildebeest, maybe Thompson's gazelles. These animals are fast over distance for sure, but their initial acceleration is much slower, usually somewhere between 4.5 and 5.6 meters per second.
Ah, I see.
So the lion's ability to hit a high speed almost instantly, to close that gap in the very first few strides, that seems way more important for catching prey than just maintaining a steady speed. It's all about out-accelerating the target in that critical first moment.
This really drills down into their unique physical makeup, doesn't it? You mentioned the small heart earlier, and now we understand they also have a high concentration of fast-twitch muscle fibers, which, for anyone listening, those are the muscle fibers that give you that amazing explosive power, that speed for short, intense bursts, but they tire out really quickly.
Exactly.
So that whole physiological package perfectly explains why the chases are so short and why that long stalk is so vital. They have to get close enough to make that explosive but very brief power count. It's this huge animal just launching itself forward with this incredible, almost shocking force for just a very short, decisive window of time.
And that short, powerful chase leads directly to the final make-or-break moment, the kill itself.
Right, and once they've actually managed to catch their prey, the struggle isn't necessarily over instantly. Our sources talk about what they call a crucial 10-minute hold during the kill. What exactly is going on during those 10 minutes?
This is where you really see the lion's incredible strength, their precision, and just sheer determination come into sharp focus, especially with larger prey like a wildebeest or maybe even a buffalo. Lions mainly use strangulation or suffocation.
Okay.
They do this with an unbelievably powerful clamping bite, either to the throat, crushing the windpipe, or sometimes clamping over the muzzle, cutting off the air supply that way. And crucially, they will hold that grip, applying immense pressure for as long as 10 minutes, sometimes even a bit longer, until the prey completely stops struggling. It's not usually an instant kill, it's a sustained, exhausting effort.
Wow.
Now, for smaller prey, they might use those huge canine teeth to sever the spinal cord, which is much quicker. They also use their massive body weight to help pull the struggling animal down and keep it pinned.
10 minutes. That is such an intense, sustained display of force and willpower. It really makes you realize it's not always a quick, clean end. It's often this brutal, drawn-out battle for both the lion and the prey. You can just imagine the incredible power, the unwavering focus needed to maintain that kind of hold for that long, especially against a big, desperate animal fighting for its life.
It's undeniably a testament to their predatory skill, absolutely. But it also highlights the huge risks involved for the lion itself. They can get seriously injured during this phase, a kick to the head, gored by a horn, even bitten. They're right there in the thick of it with a powerful, frantic animal. So that 10-minute hold is actually a time of extreme vulnerability for the lion too, which really underlines why it's so critical. Every single part of the hunt, from that maybe half-hour stalk to the short, explosive attack, right through to that vital 10-minute hold, demands incredible energy, focus, and a willingness to face extreme danger.
And then, once the kill is finally made, once the prey is subdued, you'd think they could relax, but no. The next challenge pops up immediately, actually eating and keeping that hard-earned meal safe.
You would think so, wouldn't you? After all that effort, you'd imagine they could just settle down and enjoy the feast. But the savannah is an incredibly competitive place. Our sources make it really clear there's a strict hierarchy, a pecking order at a kill site, especially if there are other predators or scavengers hanging around.
So it's definitely not finders keepers. Who gets to eat first?
Absolutely not. There's a very clear order. The adult males always eat first. And they can put away an unbelievable amount, up to 40 kilograms, that's nearly 88 pounds, of meat in one go.
40 kilos?
Yeah, to give you some perspective, that's roughly a quarter of their entire body weight consumed in a single meal.
That's insane.
After the males have had their fill, then the adult females get their turn. They average about 14 kilograms or 31 pounds a day during the wet season, though their basic daily need is closer to 5 to 8.5 kilos. And only after the adults have eaten pretty well do the cubs and younger lions get access.
40 kilograms for a male. That's like a person eating, what, hundreds of pounds of food in one sitting. It's mind-blowing.
That hierarchy, though, it might seem a bit harsh to us, especially thinking about the cubs waiting, but it makes perfect sense from an evolutionary standpoint, doesn't it?
It really does. Yeah, while it might look unfair, especially to the youngsters, that strict order ensures the most important individuals get fed first. That means the big males, who are crucial for defending the pride, defending the territory from rival males, and the main hunting lionesses. Keeping them strong ensures the whole pride's safety and future success. It also helps explain how older or injured lions, ones that can't really hunt effectively anymore, can still survive within the pride structure. They get the leftovers.
And lions are incredibly thorough eaters. They usually consume almost everything: edible meat, organs, even some bone. They'll often drag bigger kills into cover, like thick bushes, to try and hide them from scavengers. And they can gorge, eating up to maybe 30 kilograms or 66 pounds in one session if they get the chance. That ability to gorge helps them store energy, build up fat reserves, to get them through times when hunting isn't successful.
This is fascinating. And speaking of using every part, I was really struck by learning that scientists can actually figure out what a lion's been eating by finding undigested hair in their droppings. Apparently, they even use those rough, raspy tongues like sandpaper to scrape some of the hair off the carcass while they're eating so they don't ingest too much of it. They truly waste almost nothing. Again, it just points to that incredible efficiency that defines their survival.
Absolutely. But like you said, getting the food is really only half the equation. Keeping it, defending that kill from all the rivals out there on the savannah, that's another intense, often violent struggle.
Yeah, you see it all the time in those nature documentaries, right? The big showdowns over a carcass,
Yeah.
lions having to fiercely defend their meal from vultures circling overhead, and especially from those really smart, persistent hyenas.
Oh, it's a constant battle, high stakes, all the time. Having a male lion present makes a huge difference in keeping spotted hyenas away. Lionesses on their own, especially if the males are off somewhere else, they can actually lose up to 20% of their kills just to hyenas, and maybe another 17% to other lions, like from a neighboring pride trying to muscle in.
Wow, that's a significant chunk.
It really is. It just shows you how intense that competition is out there.
Yeah.
Now, hyenas, they'll often hang back at first, maybe 30 to 100 meters away, just watching, waiting. But they're well known for ganging up, mobbing lions to try and steal the kill. And it's not just about food either. These two species have this deep-seated ancient rivalry. They'll attack each other even when there's no food involved.
That rivalry is legendary, isn't it? I remember reading some pretty stark figures about it, like in Etosha National Park. Studies showed lions were responsible for up to 71% of all hyena deaths. So it's definitely not just squabbling over dinner. It's a serious, often deadly fight for dominance and territory.
And here's where we get a really surprising twist, something that flips that whole king narrative again. Our sources point out that actually, most carrion on which both hyenas and lions feed upon are killed by hyenas rather than lions.
Wait, really? So lions are scavenging from hyenas more often than the other way around?
It seems that way based on the evidence, which is pretty remarkable, isn't it? It shows that lions are also highly opportunistic scavengers, and it paints a much more complex picture of the power dynamics between these two top predators. It's not a simple hierarchy. It's this fluid, dynamic relationship. And that constant pressure from competitors, from hyenas, from other lions means that even after a successful hunt, even after they've eaten, lions can never fully relax. They have to stay vigilant. It shapes their behavior, their pride structure, constantly.
And these intense interactions with other animals. It also casts a light on an even more complex and, frankly, worrying issue. The intersection between lions and humans, which, as we know, often leads to conflict.
Yeah, this is a really serious reality for lion populations across Africa. Human-lion conflict, especially what's termed livestock depredation, and just for clarity, that's when lions kill domestic animals like cattle, goats, sheep. It's genuinely one of the biggest threats lions face today. It's particularly bad in West and Central Africa. Now, thankfully, attacks on humans themselves are rare in those areas, but the loss of livestock is huge. And the impact on local communities, both economically and emotionally, is just
And
immense.
this isn't just some abstract number on a conservation report, is it? This hits people directly in their wallets, their food security, their way of life. The cost of this depredation can range from, say, U.S. $138 to U.S. $307 per household annually. Now, that might not sound like a fortune to everyone listening, but in these communities, they can be a massive blow sometimes, representing 2, 3, even over 4% of the value of their entire herd in certain areas.
Exactly.
That's like losing a huge chunk of your savings, your retirement fund, your kids' inheritance, all in one night. You can absolutely understand why it generates so much anger and fear.
Precisely. And that direct economic loss often forces people into retaliatory killing of lions or even preemptive killing to try and prevent attacks. It's crucial to understand these aren't usually acts of cruelty by people who just hate wildlife. They're often driven by sheer desperation, by the need to protect their families, their livelihoods, what little they might have.
What methods do they use?
The methods vary. It can be shooting, sometimes luring lions with poisoned bait, poisoning carcasses they know lions might scavenge on later, or using snares. And it's vital. We see this often comes from a place of necessity. Interestingly, our sources mention that while we often assume a direct link livestock killed equals lions killed, that connection remains untested in many places because getting reliable information on exactly why and how lions are killed is incredibly difficult. It just shows how complex this whole situation is. It's not just lions versus people, it's tied up with poverty, land use, human development, everything.
So it's crystal clear that any conservation effort that's going to work has to do more than just protect the lions in a bubble. It absolutely has to involve and support the local people whose lives are directly affected by sharing the landscape with these predators.
Absolutely.
And the good news is there are some really innovative, sometimes quite clever strategies being developed and used to try and reduce this conflict, to find ways for people and lions to actually coexist.
Yes, thankfully there are. Various approaches are showing real promise, and they often work best when they're tailored to the specific local situation and available resources. For example, simply improving livestock enclosures, these are often called bomas, building them stronger, maybe using thick clay walls or dense thorny bushes, that's made a huge difference. Some studies have shown it can cut depredation by half, or even in some really encouraging cases, reduce attacks from maybe 9 incidents down to 0 just by reinforcing those enclosures properly.
0 attacks? That's incredible. That really shows these practical measures, even if they take effort, can be super effective and give communities real power to protect their animals.
Totally. And there are other things too. Employing eco-guards, often people from the local community who are trained to patrol grazing areas and actively deter lions. That's worked well. In one area, it brought cattle losses down from 60 to 18, creating safe livestock corridors, routes to guide herds through areas where lions are known to be. That's another strategy being looked at.
And the cultural approaches you mentioned.
Yeah, what's really fascinating is how some solutions integrate cultural understanding. For instance, involving religious leaders who can use passages from scriptures, like the Quran in some areas, that promote respect for nature and wildlife stewardship. That can be really powerful. And tapping into traditional knowledge, local hunters using specific techniques with noise and smoke, sometimes made from surprising things like bat guano or tree ash, to keep lions away from villages.
That's amazing. It's like this blend of ancient practices and modern conservation thinking coming together to find real-world solutions. And I noticed the sources even mentioned things like magic and amulets, which people apparently invest quite a bit in. It might seem unusual to us, but it shows the deep cultural layers involved and the wide range of ways people try to cope.
It really does, and it underlines a key point. For mitigation to work, it has to be judiciously chosen and adapted to local circumstances. There's no one-size-fits-all answer. And there are challenges, definitely. Building and maintaining those strong enclosures takes a lot of labor, and herders have to weigh up lots of factors when deciding where to graze their animals, not just lions, but where's the water, is it safe from cattle thieves, things like that. But despite the complexities, this mix of strategies, from science to culture, really does offer hope for finding ways to live alongside lions more peacefully.
So beyond these really serious life and death conflicts, sometimes lions just, well, they just get in the way. Which brings us right back to where we started, that image of lions blocking the road. And there's a very specific, quite powerful story related to this, which really highlights how time plays out in these encounters.
It's actually a surprisingly common sight in many national parks, and often pretty funny when you see it lions just sprawled out, napping right in the middle of a road.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially during the COVID-19 lockdowns in places like Kruger National Park in South Africa, there were loads of photos of lions just taking advantage of the quiet roads, sleeping right on the warm tarmac. Which is something they don't usually do quite so blatantly when there are lots of cars around. It shows they're generally used to vehicles. They sort of see them as just part of the scenery, but they still have that deep, instinctual fear of people actually walking on foot.
Those roadside naps, they kind of perfectly capture that lion tendency to seek out comfortable spots, often warmer surfaces like tarmac, just to rest. And it also shows how adaptable they are, or maybe just how little they care about human schedules, and how quickly they move back into spaces and resume natural behaviors when human presence drops off.
And this brings us to a really incredible true story from the Selous Game Reserve in Tanzania. It perfectly illustrates this idea of a critical time window, both in a lion's life and in our interactions with them. So a safari group, tourists and their guides, they came across this big pride of lions completely blocking the road ahead.
Just like our opening scenario.
Exactly. At first, everyone just figured, okay, they're resting, enjoying the sun, maybe being a bit lazy. The guides told everyone, let's just be patient, wait them out. So they waited. 5 minutes passed, then 10 minutes, and the lions. They just didn't budge. Completely still.
Okay, so already this isn't just a quick photo op. It's turning into this extended waiting game, right? The tension must have been building a bit.
For sure. After about 15 minutes of this really unusual stillness, the experienced guides started to think, something's not quite right here. Their gut feeling kicked in. So they radioed the park's conservation team. When the rangers arrived and carefully observed the pride from a distance, they immediately recognized something was seriously wrong.
Oh, was it?
The big male lion, right in the middle of the pride, he was absolutely still. His breathing was really shallow, kind of irregular, and the lionesses weren't just lounging around him, they were gathered really tightly, protectively. Their body language wasn't aggressive, but it was clearly signaling to the rangers, stay back, but something's wrong here. We need help. The rangers, knowing it was the rainy season, a time when parasites are common, quickly suspected the male was critically ill with a severe internal parasite infestation.
Wow. So that initial 15-minute period, where the tourists and guides just patiently waited and observed, that directly led to identifying a critical situation. It sounds like it went from being just a traffic jam caused by lions to potentially a life-or-death situation for the male, needing urgent help. That shift must have happened pretty quickly once the rangers arrived.
Absolutely. It highlights exactly how these encounters can unfold over time. That initial period of just waiting and watching, which then led to a critical diagnosis, and that, in turn, demanded a decisive, timely intervention. The conservation team acted fast. They prepared and administered a fast-acting anti-parasitic drug and a stimulant to help him rally, and what happened next was just, well, pretty remarkable.
Okay, so the clock is ticking again. They've intervened. What happened in the minutes after that critical decision? That's what makes this so compelling.
Exactly. 30 minutes later, that's the time frame reported, just 30 minutes after getting the medication, the male lion slowly opened his eyes. He let out this faint, kind of raspy roar, maybe a sound of returning strength, and with what looked like huge effort, he started trying to get up.
Oh, wow.
The lionesses, sensing the change, immediately gathered even closer, almost like they were physically supporting him, offering comfort just by being there. The tourists, who'd been watching all this in complete silence, you can imagine the emotion. They watched as the king slowly got to his feet, looked around, seemed to regain some of that majestic bearing, and then the entire pride, together again, started to move off the road, melting back into the bush.
30 minutes. Just half an hour from getting the medicine to being able to stand and move off with his pride. It's incredible. From that first 15-minute wait to the diagnosis, the intervention, and then that crucial 30-minute recovery window. It just perfectly highlights how specific periods of time can be absolutely make or break. Not just for a lion's immediate survival, but also for these really profound, unexpected moments of connection, or at least observation, between humans and wildlife. That whole incident, started by a simple roadblock, turned into this powerful example of human patience leading to vital observation and then timely action saving a life.
And encounters like that, which show both the potential for conflict but also for this kind of compassionate intervention, they really serve as a stark reminder of why ongoing, robust conservation efforts are just so incredibly urgent.
And when you do zoom out and look at the bigger picture of the overall conservation status for lions globally, well, it paints a pretty sobering picture, doesn't it?
It really does. The African lion, the one we've been focusing on, is currently listed as vulnerable on the IUCN Red List. That's the Global Authority on Species Conservation Status. Their populations are estimated to have dropped by a shocking 43% since the early 1990s.
43%, that's nearly half.
It's a massive decline for such an iconic animal. And the situation is even worse for the West African subpopulation. They're listed as critically endangered. There are thought to be fewer than 250 mature lions left across that entire vast region, scattered in fragmented pockets. The main drivers: habitat loss is huge, that human conflict we talk so much about, and also disease outbreaks.
That's a really stark contrast to how lions are often portrayed, isn't it? As this symbol of power, of wildness, almost invincible. It's easy to forget just how vulnerable they actually are in the real world.
It is. But importantly, it's not all bad news. There are definite glimmers of hope, stories that show us that dedicated, focused conservation work can make a massive difference. A key example is in India, with the Asiatic lion. Their population is found only in the Gir forest area. Back in 1974, there were only about 180 of them left.
Wow, critically low.
Extremely low. But thanks to sustained conservation efforts, by 2025, their numbers had climbed back up to around 891. It's a truly remarkable success story. Now, they're still geographically isolated in that one area, which brings its own risks, and they're still listed as endangered, but it shows what can be achieved.
That difference between the African situation and the Asiatic lion recovery really highlights both the scale of the challenges conservation faces worldwide, but also the incredible potential for success when there's real commitment and resources put behind it.
It absolutely underscores how vital, well-managed, protected areas are. They act as these essential strongholds for lion populations. And critically, the money generated from things like wildlife tourism, when managed properly, can provide powerful incentives for conservation because it directly benefits the local communities living alongside the wildlife.
Right.
That fosters a sense of shared responsibility and economic reason to protect these animals. Ultimately, it comes down to achieving what we call sustainable coexistence. And that's not just about protecting the lions in isolation. It means actively supporting the people whose daily lives and livelihoods are intertwined with the presence of these predators. It's a really complex balancing act, but it's essential.
And looking ahead, with human populations still growing, climate change altering landscapes, the future for lions definitely remains uncertain. But stories like that one from Seolis, where human patience, careful observation, and that quick intervention within that crucial 30-minute window made all the difference. They really show us what's possible when we choose to engage with compassion and use our intelligence to find solutions.
It certainly raises a profound point for all of us to consider.
So we've really journeyed through the lion's world today, haven't we? From understanding those incredible 20-hour rest cycles, that profound stillness, to the intense, short, explosive bursts needed for their hunts. We've talked about the critical 10 minutes needed to secure a kill. And we saw how a 30-minute period on a dusty road could bring a majestic lion back from the very brink. We've touched on their complex social lives, the fierce competition they face for every meal, and that intricate, often difficult, but sometimes surprisingly moving relationship they share with us humans.
It's become clear, hasn't it, that so much of a lion's existence is shaped by this remarkable patience, this deep-seated economy of effort. They conserve energy meticulously, saving it all for those brief, make-or-break moments of survival, whether that's the hunt, the kill, defending their pride, or even just enduring illness until help arrives or they recover on their own.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. Considering how much of a lion's life is spent in that strategic stillness, banking energy for those short, decisive bursts, what can we as humans maybe learn from that? In our world, which often feels obsessed with constant motion, nonstop busyness, needing everything right now, could embracing periods of deliberate inactivity or cultivating profound patience, focusing our energy for shorter, more intense, truly purposeful efforts, could that maybe redefine how we think about our own success, our own well-being? Maybe think about it. Perhaps sometimes the most powerful, the most strategic thing any of us can do is simply to wait.